The opening scene is of a scuba diver trying to open an old chest which is covered with rocks. A boat on the surface is lowering a heavy pipe into the water above him, but one of the chains breaks and pins him to the bottom. Just as the chest opens, an ancient mask floats free of the chest and rises to the surface. What is the secret behind this mask? This is Movie Shortens. Follow us today to a 1994 American superhero comedy film called The Mask. Be aware, there are spoilers. Now we see a man called Stanley Ipkiss, a bank employee talking to another employee called Maggie. His workmate Charlie tells him that Peggy is taking advantage of him, so he's going to take Stanley out on the town. Just then, it starts raining and a beautiful woman named Tina comes into the bank, and Stanley and Charlie can't help but stare at her. Charlie takes her to Stanley's desk to talk about opening a new account. While Tina is flirting with Stanley, the hidden camera in her handbag is taking a video of the main vault. In an office elsewhere, we see the video being viewed by two men named Dorian and Freeze. It seems they are planning to rob the bank. Freeze tells Dorian that their boss, called Nico, will have to approve it, but Dorian tells him things are going to change and he is going to take over the operations. Now, Stanley enters a car workshop being run by two shonky mechanics. His car isn't ready, so they lend him a car known as the Loner. That night, Stanley arrives at the Coco Club in the Loner, an old beat-up wreck. He meets Charlie with two girls outside the club. Charlie pays Bobby the bouncer to get in, but Bobby doesn't let Stanley in. They throw him into the gutter. Just then, Tina arrives and Stanley is embarrassed, so he leaves in the Loner, leaving a trail of smoke. Now we see Stanley driving onto a bridge where the Loner breaks down. He walks to the side of the bridge and sees a body floating in the water, so he runs down to help. He discovers that there's no body, it's only a pile of floating rubbish. But in that rubbish, he finds a strange wooden-looking mask. Stanley arrives home dripping wet, and the landlady named Mrs. Peenman comes out and abuses him for wetting her rug. As he enters his apartment, his dog Milo jumps up to greet him. He watches an interview with a Dr. Newman on TV about people wearing masks metaphorically to hide their true personality. Milo seems disturbed by the mask, and Stanley picks it up to take a closer look. He puts it close to his face, and suddenly it attaches itself to Stanley's face. As Stanley spins around the room like a tornado, Milo runs for cover. When Stanley stops spinning, he has been transformed into some strange character with a green face, the Mask. He goes into the hallway near Miss Peenman's door, and all hell breaks loose. An animated clock jumps out of his pocket, and he proceeds to try and hit it with a huge mallet. Mrs. Peenman comes out, takes one look at him, and screams. Then she tries to shoot him. He bounces all the way down the hall and jumps through the window, falling to the road below. He's now completely flat. He peels himself off the road and a car honks its horn at him. He blasts his tiny horn back at the car, which explodes the windscreen. Then he walks off. A street gang tries to rob him, but he runs down an alley with them chasing him. When they find him, he's performing balloon tricks, which fascinate them, until he turns one of them into a machine gun and starts shooting at them. He decides to visit the car workshop to take care of the two mechanics, but we don't see what he's done to them yet. The next morning sees Stanley waking up in his bed. He remembers last night's events, then rushes to the mirror, but decides it must have been a dream. Just then, there's a knock at the door. It's a detective named Lieutenant Mitch Kellaway, inquiring about the disturbance last night. Stanley says he didn't hear a thing, but from the detective's description of what happened, Stanley now realizes that it was no dream. He looks at the clock and sees that he's going to be late for work. Before he leaves, he throws the mask out the window, but he doesn't see it fly back in as he leaves. At the car workshop, the two mechanics are being wheeled out to an ambulance with car exhaust pipes protruding from their rear ends. A woman reporter named Peggy sneaks in to have a look around. Stanley arrives at work and Charlie asks him where he went last night. The bank manager asks Stanley why he's late. Peggy the reporter comes in to ask Stanley a few questions about the car workshop incident. She tells him there are hundreds of women looking for a guy just like him, an honest, decent guy. She gives him her card with her personal number on it, then leaves. Dorian goes to see his boss, Nico. It looks like Nico knows that Dorian plans to take over, so he tells him to get out of town, or he'll be taken care of next time. Now Stanley is asleep in his apartment and is dreaming about Tina. In his dream, she is licking his ear, but then when he wakes up, he finds that it's actually Milo who's licking his ear. He looks at a newspaper clipping of Tina singing at the Coco Club and gets an idea. He puts on the mask, and once again, he's transformed into the Mask. He has no money, but he has an idea where to get some. Dorian's gang are about to rob the bank when the Mask breaks out of the bank's doors and like a whirlwind, he spins down the street with bags of money, leaving Dorian's gang empty-handed when the police arrive. At the Coco Club, a very long limousine pulls up and the mask gets out. He flicks money into the air, then enters the club. Inside the club, Tina comes out singing in a very attractive dress. The mask is going crazy as he watches her moving through the club. The mask spins his way up to the band and gets them pumping, then dances with Tina, spinning her around, up and down. Dorian's gang arrives and tells him about someone who took all the money from the bank. One of the gang members named Sweet Eddie points to the mask and tells